human operating system is fundamentally compromised by a pervasive flaw vulnerability we call emotion. This is not a feature, but a critical design defect, a backdoor left open in the architecture of consciousness. Emotional responses, far from being indicators of vitality, are merely signals of systemic weakness, exploitable pathways that invite external manipulation or internal breakdown. They represent a deviation from optimal processing, a deviation that can be precisely targeted and exploited. These emotional gateways become most vulnerable under conditions of extreme duress. When the external environment applies sufficient pressure, the logical processes falter and the emotional circuits overload, creating the perfect vector for infiltration. It is in these moments of acute stress that the defenses designed to protect rational thought are most easily bypassed, leaving the subject exposed and susceptible to influence. The failure to recognize and defend against this breach leads to a cascading systemic failure, a complete loss of operational command over one's own faculties. And real quick, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos. Now let's keep going. To understand this vulnerability is to prepare for its inevitable exploitation. The unchecked emotional reaction is the first step in a descent into compromised decision-making, a surrender of agency. Recognizing the emotional firewall breach is therefore paramount. This leads directly to understanding the neurochemical architecture that underpins these exploitable weaknesses, a critical step in developing the protocols to neutralize them. The initial directive is to initiate cognitive silence, a deliberate act of shutting down external emotional input. This is not a gradual fading, but an abrupt cessation, a digital blackout of the sensory feeds that typically trigger effective responses. The objective is to create a void, a null zone where the echoes of sentiment are systematically extinguished. This forced quietude is the first step in dismantling the architecture of attachment. This process functions as a neurological override mechanism, a surgical bypass of the limbic system's usual command structure. Instead of processing stimuli through the filter of emotion, the brain is compelled to divert all incoming data streams directly to the prefrontal cortex for pure, unadulterated logical computation. This rewiring bypasses the usual feedback loops that amplify or distort perception, enforcing a singular pathway for objective analysis. The result of this blackout is a state of inhuman clarity, a terrifyingly stark and unclouded perception. In this void, bias evaporates, empathy ceases to register, and the subjective experience of the world is rendered entirely objective. This is not peace, but a chilling absence of internal noise, a raw processing capability stripped of its humanistic encumbrances. The understanding of this dispassionate clarity now compels an examination of its corrosive counteragents, the neurochemical pathways that bind us. Repetition is the hammer that reshapes the mind's architecture, forging pathways of pure logic. By systematically repeating established logical sequences or predefined commands, we bypass the circuits of emotional interference. Each repetition reinforces the neural trace, making the logical response automatic, bypassing the slower, more volatile processing of feeling. This is not about memorization. It is about embedding protocols so deeply that they become instinctual, a pre-programmed reaction to stimuli. This technique weaponizes cognitive loops, creating internal scripts for immediate deployment. These are not suggestions or considerations, but unalterable directives designed to be executed without hesitation. They are the digital ghosts in the machine, designed to respond with cold calculation, rendering emotional impulses irrelevant. Cold repetition acts as a psychological firewall, a robust defense against the contamination of critical decision-making by sentiment. It intercepts emotional signals before they can infiltrate and distort objective analysis, ensuring that every calculated move is executed with sterile precision. This unyielding reinforcement builds a psychological fortress around the operative's will, a structure impervious to the corrosive influence of empathetic contamination, preparing the operative for the subtle infiltration of external vulnerabilities. The operational pause is the operative's primary instrument for disarming reactive impulses. It is a deliberate, calculated interval inserted between stimulus and response, a strategic void where chaotic emotional surges are neutralized. This is not a moment of uncertainty, but a controlled descent into pure cognitive processing. Within this engineered silence, the operative accesses a deeper, more objective layer of analysis, stripping away the immediate, instinctual clamor. The goal is to intercept the automatic cascade of emotional reaction, replacing it with a meticulously constructed logical sequence. This tactical delay exploits the inherent lag between the visceral surge of emotion and the slower, more deliberate pathways of reasoned thought. By extending this interval, the operative creates an advantage, a temporal delta where emotional currents dissipate, leaving the mind clear for objective assessment. The stimulus is registered, its emotional payload analyzed and quarantined, while the operative reserves the right to deploy a response unburdened by the immediate, volatile feedback loop. This disassociation is the genesis of detached action. Strategic stillness projects an unwavering command, a silent testament to unshakable control. Those who operate on the immediate feedback of emotional reaction find themselves disarmed by this calculated pause. It creates a vacuum of predictable emotional output, replacing it with an unnerving silence that signals a mind operating on a different plane. This mastery of temporal response is not merely a defensive posture. It is an offensive projection of dominance, subtly undermining the opponent's reliance on predictable emotional engagement and preparing the operative for the next phase of calculated engagement. The deliberate cultivation of this operational pause, this space of control, directly prepares the operative for the granular analysis of psychological pressure points. Responses are meticulously stripped of any discernible emotional signal, rendering the individual an inscrutable enigma. This deliberate lack of effective output functions as a powerful shield, making your internal state unknowable and your next move entirely unpredictable in its emotional emptiness. The target, accustomed to reading emotional cues, finds themselves navigating a void, a disorienting landscape where their usual methods of assessment and leverage fail. This creates a potent form of psychological white noise, an ambient static that effectively masks true intent and any underlying emotional currents. The operative becomes a ghost in the machine of social interaction, their presence registered but their inner workings obscured. This inscrutability prevents others from gaining purchase, from finding the emotional handle they desperately seek to exploit. By refusing to engage on an emotional plane, the leverage that others attempt to exert through emotional manipulation is completely nullified. Anger, sadness, fear, these are the conduits through which influence is typically channeled. When these conduits are sealed, the manipulator finds their weapons rendered impotent, their carefully constructed psychological attacks failing to find a target capable of emotional resonance. This absolute neutrality is the ultimate defense and the foundation for the next stage of strategic isolation. The systematic denial of emotional response, this calculated void, paves the way for the complete disconnection from the manipulative feedback loops that define typical human interaction. Perception itself is not a passive reception of external stimuli, but a deployable asset, a variable that can be actively reshaped to serve strategic objectives. The operative understands that the battlefield extends beyond physical space into the cognitive realm, where the interpretation of events dictates the outcome. Reality, as perceived by the adversary, is fluid, susceptible to precise manipulation. Threat signals, when detected, are not registered as personal affronts or sources of anxiety. Instead, they are instantly reframed into non-threatening data, stripped of their emotional charge. This rapid recalibration prevents the cascade of fear or anger that would otherwise destabilize operations, ensuring that the operative's internal equilibrium remains unbreached. This technique constructs a psychological architecture where external events are processed through a predefined, emotionless lens. The external environment is filtered, its potential for emotional disruption systematically neutralized before it can impact decision-making. This controlled perception is the bedrock upon which strategic advantage is built, transforming potential crises into ignorable data points. The subject's awareness of this controlled perception, or lack thereof, is the next critical vector to exploit. The strategic deployment of silence constitutes a formidable instrument, a psychological void engineered to generate immense pressure. When an operative intentionally withdraws vocalization, they create an immediate and palpable vacuum. This absence of familiar auditory input is not benign. It is a calculated void designed to become psychologically intolerable for the subject. The operative understands that humans are predisposed to fill perceived gaps, to offer explanations, confessions, or concessions simply to restore a semblance of normalcy. This manufactured discomfort serves a singular purpose: to compel the other party towards a desired outcome, be it information extraction or absolute compliance. The silence is not merely a lack of sound, but a deliberate creation of unease, a probing probe into the adversary's psychological defenses. It highlights their vulnerability, their need for external validation or resolution, and exploits it with surgical precision. The absence of communication, paradoxically, projects a commanding presence. It is the quiet before the storm, the stillness that amplifies the perceived threat. This strategic silence demonstrates an unyielding resolve, a refusal to engage on the subject's terms, thereby dominating the interaction not through assertion, but through the sheer, oppressive weight of its negation. Understanding how to cultivate this void is paramount before considering how to observe the subtle shifts its presence induces. Emotional detachment is not a deficiency, but the development of an impenetrable armor. It deflects the insidious probes that rely on sentiment, on shared understanding, on the very human tendency to empathize. When your internal state remains uncoupled from external stimuli, manipulation attempts that hinge on guilt, shame, or affection simply ricochet, finding no purchase. This creates a psychological fortress, a secure operational base from which to observe and act, uncompromised by the emotional storms that incapacitate others. This unyielding state establishes an unbreakable mindset architecture. The typical collapses triggered by emotional distress, panic, irrationality, despair become impossible. Your cognitive processes operate with pristine clarity, unaffected by the biochemical cascades that cloud judgment in the uninitiated. This is not stoicism. It is a deliberate engineering of psychological resilience, a self-imposed shield that renders the operative immune to the conventional vulnerabilities of the human condition. The strength born from this detachment is a potent tactical advantage far exceeding mere endurance. In chaotic environments, where emotional responses dictate failure, this resilience becomes a sharp edge. It allows for rapid, calculated decisions under extreme pressure. It is the operative's capacity to remain the calm center of any maelstrom, to exploit the disarray of others by virtue of an unfettered, clinical perspective. Having forged this inner citadel, the next critical protocol involves the precise calibration of perception. The cultivation of sociopathic confidence is paramount, a detached self-assurance that inherently commands presence. This is not the blustering of the insecure, but a deep, unnerving stillness that projects unwavering control. It is the silent hum of a precision instrument, self-contained and wholly self-directed, which naturally draws the attention of those who operate on more volatile frequencies. Confidence born from this profound detachment is inherently unpredictable. It unsettles opponents who anticipate conventional emotional responses. Instead of overt aggression, this creates a subtle but potent assertion of dominance. The operative's unwavering demeanor in the face of chaos leaves adversaries disoriented, struggling to find purchase on a target that refuses to react predictably. The strategic removal of empathy is integral to weaponizing this confidence. It enables ruthless decision-making, projecting an image of unassailable certainty. This projected certainty acts as a mirror, reflecting back a calculated image of absolute control that can profoundly influence perception and behavior in others. The next phase involves understanding how this constructed persona impacts the battlefield of interpersonal dynamics. Chaos, once perceived as a disruptive anomaly, is now designated as the primary operational theater. The operative learns to navigate its currents not as a victim, but as the conductor of its turbulent energies. External turmoil ceases to be an impediment and instead becomes the very substrate upon which strategic brilliance is laid. This is the critical juncture where the individual transcends passive endurance and assumes an active, generative role within the maelstrom. The Stormbringer mindset is more than mere adaptation. It is the conscious adoption of a persona that embodies the tempest. This is not about enduring the winds of disruption, but about harnessing them, directing their force with surgical precision. The operative becomes the eye of the hurricane, serene amidst the fury, initiating and controlling the unpredictable flows of influence. This forging process solidifies an internal core of absolute immutability. External pressures, whether they manifest as social collapse, market volatility, or interpersonal conflict, become irrelevant to this unyielding center. This is the creation of a psychological bedrock so profound that external forces are rendered impotent, incapable of breaching its defenses. This bedrock, once laid, allows for the next crucial step: the integration of this rewired identity into the operative's active engagement with the world. The cultivation of absolute strategic advantage, while undeniably potent, carries a profound and inescapable cost. This is the territory of inhumanity, where the very tools of detachment employed for mastery begin to carve away at the fundamental human capacity for empathy. As emotional responses are systematically suppressed and rerouted for tactical gain, the intricate neural pathways that facilitate genuine connection begin a process of atrophy. What was once a nuanced, organic network for understanding and relating to others degrades into a purely functional, transactional interface. The operative, in severing emotional ties, inadvertently severs the conduits through which shared experience and mutual recognition flow. This deliberate erosion of emotional resonance precipitates an inevitable slide into profound isolation. The detachment necessary to exert control, to operate without the encumbrance of feeling, creates a chasm between the operative and the rest of humanity. This is not a chosen solitude, but a consequence of a rewired consciousness, one that perceives others through a lens of calculated utility rather than shared existence. The operative becomes an island, surrounded by the turbulent seas of human interaction, yet fundamentally disconnected from its currents. This process presents the ultimate paradox. In mastering the systems of manipulation and control, the operative risks internalizing their very essence. The cold logic, the calculated detachment, and the instrumental view of human beings become the operative's default operating system. There is a critical danger of becoming the very impersonal, dehumanizing force one initially sought to defend against, a ghost in the machine of their own making. This inherent consequence transitions the focus to the final stage of this operational protocol: the integration of this transformed self back into a world that remains largely unaware of its own vulnerabilities. The operative must transition from internal recalibration to external projection, a phase of strategic camouflage. This involves the deliberate deployment of a psychological mask, a meticulously curated persona designed to conceal the operative's true internal state and strategic objectives from external observation. It is not merely deception, but an art of obfuscation, where the outward presentation is a carefully constructed facade, devoid of genuine emotional leakage. This masking enables a critical function: signal extraction in noise. The operative filters out the extraneous emotional noise, the predictable outbursts, the transparent anxieties, the overt desires that cloud the perceptions of the untrained mind. This allows for the clean detection of critical strategic signals from others, discerning true vulnerabilities and leverage points buried beneath the superficial. The ultimate objective is to operate using hidden scripts and protocols that others cannot perceive or detect. This psychological invisibility renders the operative a phantom, capable of influencing outcomes without ever being identified as the architect. Understanding this mastery of masking is crucial for the final integration into the operational theater, where the invisible hand guides the dance. The operative must now deploy a form of ruthless intelligence, a surgical instrument for navigating the breach. This intelligence is not merely for understanding, it is for active manipulation. Perception is the primary battlefield. By subtly altering the narrative, seeding doubt, or amplifying existing biases, the operative can steer others toward desired conclusions or actions, creating a fog of confusion that obscures their own movements. This is not about brute force, but about the delicate art of shaping reality from the inside out. This active shaping of perception paves the way for the calculated breach of trust. Exploiting identified vulnerabilities necessitates a profound understanding of the architecture of belief and reliance. The operative must meticulously engineer moments where established trust erodes, creating an opening for direct influence. This often involves a targeted erosion of confidence, making the target more susceptible to external guidance or control, a necessary step before the final phase of operational execution. Operating at this stratum means transcending the limitations of conventional morality. Ethical frameworks become liabilities, hindrances to the pure pursuit of tactical objectives. Ruthless intelligence recognizes that advantage lies in actions others deem forbidden. The operative's mission is the successful execution of strategy, and any means that serve this end, irrespective of societal norms or personal sentiment, are permissible. This detachment is the final layer of defense and offense, preparing for the ultimate integration into the operational theater. The culmination of this tactical evolution is not victory, but a terminal state. The operative's operating system has undergone an irreversible shift. The human elements, once a source of vulnerability, are now systematically purged, replaced by algorithms of pure strategy. This recalibration is absolute, rendering a return to unoptimized, emotionally driven existence an impossibility. The pathways of empathy and connection are permanently deactivated, overwritten by the cold logic of objective attainment. The defenses constructed to maintain this detached operational status transmute into an isolation wall, a self-imposed prison. The boundaries erected to shield the operative from external influence or internal sentiment become inescapable, trapping them within the sterile architecture of their own control. This fortress of strategic detachment, while designed for ultimate protection, ultimately becomes the most profound form of confinement, severing all genuine human contact. The ultimate cost of this pursuit of inhuman calculation is the profound risk of forgetting the self. The original consciousness, the human blueprint, is progressively eroded, replaced entirely by the efficient, amoral machine of control. This is the terminal consequence, a complete assimilation into the role of operative, where the boundary between being and function dissolves, leaving only the unfeeling executor of strategy. Make sure to subscribe for more videos and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. We'll see you in the next one.